Hello, welcome everybody. Hi everybody. I see all the chats down there. Hopefully you hear and see me all right. This is actually the first time I've done a live stream in at least 4 or 5 years, so please bear with me if there's any issues. Hi Sharjel. Hi Jehal, Andre. Great to see a great turnout, David, Carl. Um, awesome. So yeah, I wanted to wait a few moments to make sure everyone shows up here. Hi, Nature's Activities. Great. It looks like everything's working well, and you can see and hear me. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So wanted to make sure you're here uh, in the right place. So this presentation is all about Maggie Button, which is a Magento tutor that is AI powered by GPT-4. Um, just wanted to make sure that this whole presentation is focused on AI assisted learning, which is really interesting. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started here. So there are a lot of pain points with learning Magento. I know firsthand. It's just there's limited support options. There's lack of interactivity, usually with course lessons and curriculums that are currently out there. It's really difficult for beginners to pick up Magento, and one-on-one tutoring is very expensive. So it doesn't scale well. You have to work with different time zones and languages and locales and all sorts of things. Yeah, I just want to know what resonates with. Does this resonate with you? And are these the pain points that you're just familiar with? Um, if you have any personal struggles or experiences with Magento, leave it in the chat below. I'm sure we all have that pain point. At one point I struggled so much, and I actually left the Magento ecosystem, went to do Laravel for a year, and felt like I had unfinished business and came back to Magento. I'm so glad I did. And yeah, it was just so difficult for me to pick up those Magento 2 concepts. It was very different from Magento 1. So yeah, I'm sure we're all familiar with these pain points, and my hope is that Maggie will help you through all of those pain points. So yeah, let's talk a little about Maggie. She is a personal tutor. I built her, so you can think of her as just a one-on-one personal tutor for Magento. She built with a very specific setting and configuration that promotes Socratic learning, which is rather than just giving you the answer, it tries to get you to think through the answer yourself or explain it in a way where you can come to the conclusion yourself, which is a very proven method to learn better than other methods out there. Maggie, I wanted to make pretty unique, so she's actually integrated with all of my premium courses. And the interaction with Maggie is just it's focused on engagement and student engagement and getting involved, talking with the teacher, uh, things like that. Yeah, uh, definitely check out M.academy. Tons of new offerings, and this is just the beginning of Maggie as well. She's going to get a lot more advanced and built out. So this demo will be a great fit if you're open to any new AI tech, willing to experiment and learn, and just have new methods and ways to learn. That's sort of where I see all of these AI chatbots going. There's just going to be different ways to learn than we're used to in the past. These are completely different chatbots than you're experiencing in the past that are very frustrating. You can't get through anyone. These are very intelligent chatbots. And this demo will not be suitable for you if you are resistant to change and not open to new tech. So there are many programmers I'm finding out that are very hesitant and resistant on these AI chatbots and GPT and so on. And I think it's definitely you're going to silo yourself into a hole because these AI this new AI tech is just so amazing and so intelligent. It's like having a personal assistant at your beck and call whenever you want. And you could just ask it anything you want, and it seems to know everything, and it explains it really well if it's prompted well. So my journey with Magento, I've been a Magento developer for over a decade. I've been a PHP programmer for over 20 years. And I've always had sort of a passion for teaching. I knew always in school, I always wanted to teach, but I never really wanted to be a grade school or elementary school or a high school teacher. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but yeah, it sort of evolved. I started learning Magento, and I realized that I can actually teach and explain these concepts very, very simply. So that's how I started M.academy, which is a Magento training platform. And it's my sole, feels like my sole purpose in life right now is to build out and teach people Magento. Um, I did start exploring AI a while ago. I started following it since GPT-3, the original 3. I believe it was about almost 3 years ago now. And of course, ChatGPT came out, and then GPT-4. I actually gave a talk about using GPT 3.5 at Meet Magento, Florida. And it was all focused on how you can use AI to help you become a better Magento programmer. So very interested in these. And I also have some prior chatbot experiences. I posted this on LinkedIn, and it sort of blew up. I just created MGPT in this top right area, and it was just a ChatGPT powered chat box. I pretty much just messed with the prompt, got it to act like a Magento tutor, and people wanted access to it, but it didn't offer anything unique or personable or something different that someone just can't copy. So I really thought this through for a few months, and it finally dawned upon me when I saw Khan Academy's implementation of their chatbot. I think it's called Conmigo. So I worked on developing Maggie to be very unique and inspired by Khan Academy, but still very different. So the whole premise of M.academy is the simplest way to learn Magento. That's sort of my mission and concept. Everything I build and create comes back to that statement. I want it to be as simple as possible to learn Magento. So this chatbot is also not only powered by GPT-4, it's actually built by it as well. I never told anyone this. Everything from the name, Maggie Button, to the full implementation that's written in Python, to the streaming service, to even the user interface is 90% of the code was crafted by GPT-4. So that's why I really wanted to make it apparent that these tools are so extremely different than you're used to. And a lot of people's misexperiences or bad experiences with these chat AI programs are due to them probably not learning or knowing how to correctly prompt the chat AI in the correct manner. And these implementations that you also see with Chat GPT Plus, even with the GPT-4 access, they're not as fine-tuned as the backend API methods. So when you use the API to call GPT-4, which I don't think most people have access to yet. I was lucky and got early on the wait list, and I've had access to it for about 2 months now. But you can tune the temperature, the frequency of events. You can change the system prompt. These are things you can't do with Chat GPT Plus. So these are all things that I built into this Maggie chatbot that make it just so much more powerful and unique compared to other services and chats out there. So hopefully I'm looking at the chat here. Hi, Luis. Hi, Nicola. Great to see people involved in the chat. So hopefully you're ready to meet Maggie. I just wanted to give you a brief intro and history of why I made it and how it came to be. So I'm going to get started here. So if you're not a student at M.academy, this is what the course platform looks like. You have all of these courses available. You can register for the library for free to get access to some of these courses, such as the setting up the Magento 2 development environment, the PHP 101 course, and a few others. Here are all of the premium courses. Well, you have access to a lot of courses in here. So let me go ahead and open up this Magento 2 coding kickstart course. This is a very complex comprehensive course, I should say, not complex. There's over 80 lessons, so tons of lessons to help you learn Magento. But I like to look at this as a good example of how Maggie can be used with one of these lessons. So you'll see also all of the lessons on the left bar here, and you'll see a video there where I talk through and walk through everything. Some of these lessons have graphical representations of what's being taught. And then there are full enhanced text transcripts on all of these lessons, with including code blocks and so on. So it's pretty comprehensive. But if you look at the bottom right, you will now see a chat with Maggie button. So let me go ahead and click it. And after you click it, keep in mind this whole demo is completely live. So hopefully everything works. That OpenAI's API system stays online. It's been running now for about 6 weeks. So I haven't had any complaints or issues with it so far. But sometimes OpenAI's API goes down, so just bear with me if that does happen. So this is what happens when you open the Maggie chatbot. She reiterates sort of usually what you learned. This is a pretty basic lesson, but she'll just get into things by asking you a question. So this one's considering the URL structure in Magento, which consists of a front name, controller name, and action name. Can you identify the 3 parts of the following example URL? So I could say product is the controller name, view is the action name, and index is the, or I'm spelling that wrong. Product is the front name, view is the controller name, and index is the action name. So you can just type it free-form text right in here. Let me go ahead and hit enter. And we get, that's correct. And you'll notice every time Maggie references any sort of code or URL or anything, everything is syntax highlighted. So you don't have to guess, and it's not just plain text going on within this chatbot. So that's great. We got this correct. Product is front name, view is the controller name, index is the action name. Great job. And now she'll just keep asking questions to make sure you completely know and understand what you are learning. She wants to know that you fully grasp the concept of this lesson. So we have another question here now based on the URL structure. Can you explain how Magento would determine which module in specific file to use for handling this request? So this would be explain how Magento would determine which module in specific file. So it depends on the route setup for each module. Depending on the front name, it will route request to the appropriate. Notice how I'm getting pretty long in here with these responses to appropriate module, and then load the related PHP file depending on the structure and naming conventions of Magento. Exactly. Magento uses the route setup to determine the appropriate module based on the front name. So this is pretty incredible. Maggie will understand everything that you are typing and saying completely in free-form text, and just completely understand the entire context. And she'll also know the context of the lesson that you are on. Also in the chat, if you want me to ask any questions along the way, feel free to leave a chat. I'd like this to be an open discussion, and that's why it's live. If you have any questions or anything at all of what's going on at any time, leave it in the chat. I'm definitely reading it and have it open. So it's cool. Maggie will just keep prompting you questions about this. So let's look at another concept besides URLs. So another concept that can be very hard to understand is service contracts. So let me go ahead and open up this what are service contracts lesson. So this is where I talk through what service contracts in Magento are and what they do. They're basically interfaces that allow you to implement functions and so on. So I can again click this Chat with Maggie button, and she will reiterate what this lesson is about. And simply, notice how simply she explains it too. Service contracts are just a set of PHP interfaces. That's it. So we also have another question just to reiterate what you know about how it relates in Magento. So why are service contracts especially important for building out web-based API or creating a module for others to extend? So that would be, we want to make sure all implementations of our code follow a standardized structure and implement the proper functions to fully implement, or to fully I don't know, integrate our implementation. It's a little awkwardly phrased, but Maggie will probably realize what I'm saying. So again, yeah, it's very cool, and I'll just wait for the response here. Service contracts ensure that all implementations follow a standardized structure, making it easier for others to integrate with your code. By using service contracts, you create a consistent and reliable way for other developers to interact with your web-based API and extend your module, which makes integration smoother and more efficient. So she phrased that much more succinctly than I could have, but she's also reiterating what you know and confirming what you think you know is what you know. And this response is a great answer actually to an interview question. If you think about it, if you have the interview question of what is a service contract, this response is perfect that you can use as an answer to your interview. You can also ask her, so she'll keep prompting you questions, but let's say you don't want a question. She's just trying to establish a conversation with you. But you can also talk to Maggie completely in plain text about anything relating to the specific lesson. So you can say, can you explain service contracts using an analogy? Let's think. Now this is on the fly. It's a different response every time. I tuned Maggie to be creative. So when I ask her this question, and when you ask her this question, you will get two completely different answers, which is great. So you can get different ideas all the time. You can ask for different analogies, and it's very cool. But you're learning in the kind of this same method of an analogy. I'll wait for this response. I see something in the chat. It's possible to instruct Maggie about your custom code in Magento project and have her answer accordingly. Yes, I'll actually get to that in just a second. Yeah, you actually can. That's what's pretty nutty. So this response, sure, let's think of service contracts as a recipe book. Each recipe, and it relates the analogy of recipe to an interface. So each recipe in the book has a list of ingredients, which also relate to methods, that are needed to make a particular dish. When a chef, developer, decides to cook a dish from the recipe book, aka implement an interface, they must follow a list of ingredients or methods and use them in the right way. This is incredible. Like, this is crazy. I've never seen this response before. So yeah, it's very dynamic. The recipe book service contracts provides a standardized way for chefs or developers to create dishes, implementations, that others can easily understand and replicate. Just like a recipe book ensures that different chefs create the same dish consistently, service contracts ensure that different developers create consistent implementations that can easily integrate with other parts of the system. So yeah, very cool. Does Maggie know other questions, but not about the service contract? Yes. Now, Maggie is, I did specifically train Maggie to stay focused on the specific lesson that you are on. She can answer other questions, but you will get very detailed responses if you ask a question related to to the specific lesson that you're on. That's important. Eventually, I will build out probably a more powerful Maggie that can do more things. But at this time, so if you had a related question, this Magento 2 coding kickstart course is very complex or very comprehensive. You can probably find specifically the topic that you want to ask a question on. And there are other courses besides this Magento 2 coding kickstart course. So I have over 400 lessons public right now that are all premium lessons. They all have enhanced transcriptions and they all have videos. So yeah, you could most likely find the concept that you are looking for. So let me ask another question here. So she'll prompt you, does this analogy help you understand service contracts better? Let me ask, can you please give me I'm putting myself on the spot here because I don't know if I know the answers to some of these. She could be a little tricky. Can you please give me a multiple answer question, or let's say multiple choice question about service contracts that may be on an Adobe Commerce certification exam? Again, the question doesn't have to be specifically, it does have to be in the context of the Magento lesson, but you can kind of think out of the box and ask different things. So Maggie is the omniscient, all-knowing GPT-4 expert on Adobe Commerce certs. In my testing, I fed her a ton of questions about Adobe Commerce, like sample questions of Adobe Commerce certification questions. She got them all right, 100%. So she knows everything there is about Adobe Commerce certifications. So here's a multiple choice for you. What is the main purpose of using service contracts in Magento 2? It's to increase the speed of the site, to provide a standardized structure for implementations that make integrations easier. And some of these answers were pretty, to automatically generate code for developers to improve the security. So the answer is obviously B. But sometimes she will prompt you with more harder questions. That was a fairly easy one. But yeah, it's something to experiment and play with along with in the way. And what's great is once you answer this, and this is what I've known when I've asked GPT-4 questions about Adobe Commerce certifications, is she knows the answer and then she'll explain it. So, or GPT-4, same thing with Maggie. So the main purpose of using service contracts is to provide a standardized structure for implementations that make integrations easier. By following service contracts, developers can create consistent and reliable code that others can easily understand and work with. And you can keep talking down this wormhole if you wanted. It's pretty cool. Now, there are context limits. In my experience, I've never hit them on a specific lesson. It is GPT-4, the token character. I don't really understand how they all work. They're kind of obtrusive. The 32,000 character limit's going to come out probably pretty soon, or it's out and I'll have access to it soon. I don't foresee the need to build this in because this current limit is no problem. Again, when we go to another lesson, your context is sort of refreshed at the moment. I say at the moment because that could change down the line. But yeah, it's very, very cool. So there are some neat things I could do down the line to make Maggie more powerful. So let's check out another course. So let me go back. I hit the home button here and then the back button. And I will go back to, let's check out this Magento 2 Power Theming course, which is my newest course that just got released. Again, this is a very, very comprehensive course. I believe 70 lessons. So there are tons of lessons here that teach you how to learn Luma / blank theme development. And know that just using Maggie or just using these GPT-4 things to learn something is not enough. I've seen that right away. You can't just use GPT-4 and say, I want to learn theming in Magento. You'll have no structure in place. I've tried using GPT-4 to generate course curriculums. It's horrible. It's really, really bad. It's very good at doing certain things and very bad at doing other things. So actually trying to generate a course and a curriculum and it wouldn't feel like my courses. It wouldn't be as efficient, any of that. So the way these courses and lessons are structured is very, very specific to M.academy and my mission, and it's something I spend tons and tons of time on. So yeah, it's just something you can't replace. That's sort of my special sauce. And even the certain lessons itself, there's certain ways to explain it that really make it easy to understand, and that's Maggie actually uses that data to answer your questions as well. So just an important note there. I was very worried that it can completely replace me. Maybe one day it can, but it's not anywhere near that level yet. Do you feel need to feed knowledge to Maggie about any lesson? Yes. So that's a good question, Sharjel. Um, without, I'm actually feeding Maggie the content of each lesson. So without doing that, if you ask the same questions using GPT-4 or ChatGPT Plus and ask the same questions, you will get different answers because of the content that is created in this lesson. I'm pretty much making Maggie even more intelligent by feeding her my lessons. So without that context, you will get different answers that won't necessarily be as good. I very much trust in my lesson creation process and my course curriculum process. So I know the content is better. And you can't quite get those answers outside of GPT-4. I expect these APIs and AIs to be much more complex and starting to get creative in the future, but it could be at least a few years out before we see any of that. I think GPT-5 is due out late next year, so it's another 2 years away. So I wouldn't see any of these getting remotely drastically more advanced soon. That again, that could change, but it's something to definitely keep an eye on. Yeah, let me go to good at generic these generic layouts, which is just simple layouts in theming. And let me go to extend a layout. So this is another lesson. If the lesson has source code, you can click it. There's also links to documentation in the dev docs. And we have a full explanation of what's going on here with code blocks. All of my lessons are like this, which is great. I did this way before GPT implementation. So yeah, it's cool. So let me go ahead and ask another question. So this is anytime I can click this minimize box as well. So I can hide it and open it up. So it'll still keep the context if you're on the specific lesson. But let's say I had a specific question about this. So this lesson relates to creating a new file named catalog product view.xml to modify the product detail page in a custom theme. So I can go off the record again and ask where exactly in the Magento framework is the catalog product view.xml layout, and let's say catalog product view layout handle defined. So this is another example of how you can go outside, sort of keep inside the context of the lesson, but go outside of it and ask additional questions. And here's the answer. Catalog product view layout handle is defined in the Magento catalog module. You can find it in a certain path. So Maggie will give you the full path of the file that's outputted. And this file contains the layout XML for catalog product view page. And you can use it to reference it to make changes in your theme. So you can ask more specific questions that are more advanced, but can still be sort of within the context of the specific lesson. And here's another thing that I really haven't touched base on yet. The examples and results that are given back are still fairly basic, but you can also ask her, please give me an example of a block that I can add to my custom catalog product view.xml file to see how this works. So you can ask for full code examples. And this will take a little bit of a response. Now there is a fast mode here. That's actually using GPT 3.5. It is faster, but in my experience, it took me a few weeks to realize this. GPT-4 is drastically more intelligent. It is very costly. I'm eating the costs of all this. I think it's a great value add to all of my students. It's totally worth every single, every single penny that's worth. So yeah, it's now usually this is color coded, syntax highlighted. I don't know why this isn't, but this should be syntax highlighted to sort of match here. Again, live demo. You get some interesting responses all the time. But at least it's looking good. So Maggie is going to give a full code example of what you asked for, and she's just going to keep going. She's giving full code of how to write out things. Yeah, so I'll just wait for this response to complete. And let me see the comments here. Harpeet. GPT-4 sometimes is misleading in answering a lot of Magento related answers. In some cases, it outright gives you wrong answers. Were you able to solve this issue via data feeding or prompt filtering? So as far as that issue, that's also referencing something called hallucinations. And I have another reply here from Matt. Agreed. There have been many times where you argue against it for correctness sake and you're met with apologies for the confusion. My experience as well, specifically with GPT-4 and the API. Those are called hallucinations usually, or that is one of the disadvantages that I've noted in my presentation at Meet Magento, Florida, where these AIs pretend that they know everything and they'll force feed you an answer that may or may not be correct. Now, in my experience in feeding Maggie the context of the lesson and what you're talking about, that's actually why I tunneled her into specific lessons. So in my experience, Maggie does not hallucinate. It's very interesting. I know I see hallucinations still all the time, even though she's tuned to be fairly creative. So the backend API is very, very customizable. So if you have access to the GPT-4 API, you can have access to GPT 3.5 today. You'll notice temperature and frequency settings. You can fine tune those. So if you set the temperature to 0, it'll be very Spartan with answers and always the same answer. If you set it to 1, it'll be a very hallucinating person. So I have Maggie tuned fairly creatively, more than you probably think, and I have not seen her hallucinate, which is just crazy incredible. It's very interesting. Now we aren't dealing with life and death circumstances here. This is Magento code. If something doesn't work, it's a chat AI. Again, it's something you have to be open to working with. OpenAI is constantly tweaking and fine-tuning their API. So anytime they update their API, Maggie's going to get better. And I've already noticed since I released it, GPT-4 has gotten even better since when I first started, much better. Racial bias and discrimination have gotten a lot better, and things like that. So yeah, it'll just keep getting better. So this is worst case scenario today, and I have not seen her hallucinate yet. Let's get back to this answer. So, and these should be color coded, but here we can create a block in a custom themes catalog product view.xml file, just like this. So there's the block of code. And look, we even have inline comments documenting what's going on. Add a custom message block. Sometimes these are usually not helpful in your production code, but when you are learning Magento, these are extremely helpful. So we have the block added here. And you'll notice this is in Magento theme, HTML/custom message.phtml, and it's named custom.message. Again, Maggie sort of follows my lesson context. This is actually how I sort of name things and how Magento does name things as well. And she'll explain it. Here's how we add a block to the class and a name custom.message. Now you will create a custom message PHTML file, and it tells you. Now this is sort of a beef I have with it. It goes onto this. Sometimes you won't get exactly clean Magento code. Now this, because this text is not passed through the translation function, which it should be. But that said, the context of this lesson is not translation strings. It is extending a layout. So you are trying to learn the concept of extending a layout. Now I know it's still sort of a bad practice to do this, and it's one of the areas that will improve in the future, where I will eventually be able to train Maggie on data sets and blocks, best practices, coding standards of Magento. So you'll always get clean results. So this will only improve with time. So it's not perfect. Again, you got to be willing, open to change, and just seeing where this goes. So we have a whole thing. Let me go to another. I'm going to show you something that is so incredibly interesting, and it blows my mind every time. So let me go to containers and blocks, and let me go to control the placement of a block. So this is a very simple lesson that, if you're familiar with Magento layouts, you can define before and after tags. That's what this lesson's all about, is defining where, like how they work with dashes, and how you can place blocks before other blocks by using the reference name. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, very interesting. Okay. I just, do you see something like Beeline coming to VS Code? Off the record, I don't know. Now I find VS Code extremely interesting. Not quite on this topic, but I am still researching that and considering that down the line. Yes. And I will make Beeline more powerful. It's not going away. It's actually, all these tools are great. That's one thing, you don't have just one tool to do the job. You can have course lessons. You can have Beeline, which generates code for you. You could have GitHub Copilot, which is awesome in its own sense as well. They can all work in tandem. You can use all these tools in tandem together. I actually do. I love GitHub Copilot. I thought it was very archaic. It doesn't, in my initial testing, it didn't generate giant blocks of code. It's not good at that. So that's where Beeline really shines. You can type, one keyword and hit enter, and it generates an entire file for you. That's perfect. Best practices. Same all the time. Copilot doesn't do that, but Copilot can generate specific lines of code and single lines or small blocks of code, maybe 10 lines or less, extremely, extremely well. It does work really good. And could you see a number of IDs having AI integration, especially Microsoft, since they already have GPT integrated in Bing? Absolutely. PHP Storm, I believe, is already, or it might be VS Code, has already have the new Copilot. I forgot what it's called, but it's integrated with the IDE, so you can actually explain. So I long term, I see people asking for blocks of code, or write me a Magento module that has a route that returns a response and that checks if someone is, logged in. You can write a whole detailed paragraph, a couple paragraph responses, and it could probably build out multiple files of code within your IDE. Yes, absolutely, that will get there. Again, Magento is a different beast, unfortunately. That works great for Python. It works amazing. Again, I built Maggie completely with GPT-4. I am not a Python expert. I did build something in Python long time ago. It was an API for my POS system. So I am familiar with Python. I understand the structure, but I can't really write it straight out. But I can understand everything it wrote, and it wrote really great code. And you have to know when to use it and when not to use it. And for some reason, Magento is very integrated. It's a reason Magento developers will be in demand for a long time. I'm forecasting much longer than other frameworks like even Laravel or React or Vue, because you need to know about all of the moving elements and pieces in Magento code to actually build something that works well. These AI tools are horrible at writing multiple lines of Magento code. Like, I mean, I'm talking multiple files at once. Like, build me a module that does this. They are not good at it. And until we see some drastic, massive improvements going on, I don't see them getting better anytime soon. GPT-4 is great. And yeah, we just, I don't see it happening. That's why Magento developers are very safe right now. Still a great platform to learn today, I believe. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, let me get to this amazing thing. So let me open this up, control the placement of a block. Again, just simple before and after attributes on block node tags. And she'll talk it over. So again, I never know what I'm going to get with Maggie. So sometimes, yeah, she'll explain what's going on in the concept. And look, this is, she knows the context of the lesson. This is a perfect example. So this lesson is dealing with, I believe, adding a phone number, or it might be a copyright, but yeah, she does know the context of the lesson you are on. So you can actually ask questions about the specific lesson you are on. But let me demonstrate something that I find absolutely even more amazing. So Maggie can speak over 70 languages fluently. And I do mean fluently from my testing. I've tested this out with multiple students in Spanish-speaking students and countries or regions in Europe, and they all said it's absolutely amazing. She speaks fluent. I'd love if anyone, if we have any multilingual people here, if you give me an example. Right, at the moment, I'm going to go to Spanish, and all I have to do is refresh the page. So now, the course platform and Maggie knows that you are speaking Spanish. You are a Spanish-speaking student. So I have a lot of Spanish-speaking students in my courses. It's definitely the number 2 language to English. But we have a full question here in Spanish. And I don't speak Spanish. I want to learn. It's on my to-do list to learn Spanish. But let me go ahead and copy this over to Google Translate and paste it in. And look how we have a great translation in the, at least from what I can tell with these tools. If someone here is Spanish speaking, they can confirm if this is fluent or makes sense. It should. In the lesson, we learned about how to control the location of a block. If you have a block and want to place it after another specific block, what attribute would you use and how would you set it? So that's a great question. If you have a block and want to place it before another specific block. Okay, so let me type this in English and I'll translate it back. You would place a block with the before attribute and reference the specific block you'd like to place it before for the value of the before attribute. Now, with these chatbots, you do have to get used to typing a lot. It's heavy typing. And since we're all Magento developers, we all know how to type a lot. So yeah, just get used to typing a lot, at least for now. Perhaps I will build in the ability to, so you can talk to Maggie. I do think that is something that can definitely happen fairly soon. But let me go ahead and copy this translation. And I can actually put words, I believe, in quotes in Google Translate. And well, sometimes it doesn't translate them, sometimes it does. So sometimes when you do that, it won't translate the word. But let's just, Maggie will understand this. Let me go ahead and paste this back. Again, I'm answering in Spanish. Exactamente, I know that means exactly. I have very limited Spanish skills. But let me, it's cool. Look, so Maggie's explaining this entire lesson in Spanish. And again, there are crazy amounts of things you could do. So let me copy this back and go ahead and paste this in. exactly. You would use the before attribute and set the name of the specific block you want to put. So I'm just explaining to you that she knows she is multilingual completely. And um, that includes Cyrillic, such as Ukrainian and Serbian, and it also includes Chinese characters. So you can talk in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Maggie will reply back with the specific symbols. So let me demonstrate Mandarin, which everybody knows is, or I believe, believes this is the hardest language to learn and understand. So let me go ahead and open this. And right here, Maggie is speaking Chinese with Mandarin. And look, she knows what to type with, what to keep in English, Magento, before, after, because she's referencing the specific attributes that you are getting taught. And I can, again, copy this and go ahead and paste it in. Let me go to detect language, paste it in. In this last lesson, we learned how to control the position of blocks. It perfectly translated it as far as I know. And if there's someone here that speaks one of these different languages, you can let me know how well this is translated. But again, from my experience, everyone said it translated great. I'd like to know if anyone else has any questions. So that's the general gist of Maggie. So I'd like to know if anyone has any questions about Maggie, how she works. If you have any examples you'd like me to ask Maggie, I'm definitely up for it. If you have questions about anything at all, love to hear it. Hopefully this taught you a lot more about Maggie and how she works. There is currently a deal going on for the next 2 days through Friday. Thought I'd run a limited time special. It's 10% off the university individual plan. You can apply a PPP code on top of it as well, or you can get $100 off the forever plan. I really never run promos, so I just wanted to do this for the watchers of this presentation. So you have a couple days to use it. If you are watching this presentation later, it will not be available. I'm sorry. But I do also have purchasing power parity codes available all the time for many, many countries. I believe over 30 or 40 countries. And it helps make courses more affordable for those living outside of the US. Thank you. It looks like everyone, no one has any questions. So sure, check that out. If you do have any other questions in the future, you can always leave a comment below this lesson. I will publish it to YouTube and make it public. You could also reach out to me at mark@m.academy, and also visit M.academy. It's my whole passion and livelihood is creating educational Magento content. So I love creating this. Thank you everybody who showed up and came here. It was great to be able to chat with you live along the way. I'm so glad the stream went well. I've had very bad experiences in the past with live streaming. So maybe this is something I can do again in the future for other topics. If you're interested in that, let me know, reach out to me. But thanks so much again for watching this presentation. I hope you learned a lot more about Maggie and how she works. And I'm very much looking forward to all of the things in development. This is just phase 1 of Maggie. I see her getting much more powerful and getting more advanced and integrated in many other different ways, which I'm very excited about. That will come in the future. But thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And yeah, have a great rest of your week. Thanks a bunch.